Captain Lee Woo-jin stood on the bridge of the UES Dauntless, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. The ship had been traveling for 3 months now, moving deeper into space than any human vessel had gone before. Their mission was simple: explore new star systems and look for planets that humans might live on someday. The Dauntless was humanity's best ship. It was fast, strong, and carried the most advanced technology Earth could build. Lee felt proud to command such a vessel. His crew of 200 men and women were the best trained people in the human fleet. "Captain," called Dr. Park Subin from her science station, "I'm seeing something strange on the long-range sensors." Lee walked over to look at her screen. Park was the ship's chief science officer and the smartest person he knew. If she said something was strange, he paid attention. "What do you see?" Lee asked. Park pointed at the display. "Energy readings, very large ones, coming from beyond the edge of our galaxy." She looked worried. "Captain, these readings are huge. Whatever is making them must be enormous." Lee felt his stomach tighten. In all their years of space travel, humans had never found another intelligent species. They had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now it seemed they might get their answer. "How long until they reach us?" Lee asked. Park checked her calculations. "At their current speed, about 6 hours. But, Captain, they're not heading for us. They're heading straight for Earth." Lee's blood went cold. Earth was home to 12 billion people. His wife and children lived there. Everyone he cared about was on that planet. "Send a message to Earth Command immediately," Lee ordered. "Tell them we have unknown ships approaching the solar system." The next few hours passed slowly. The crew worked quietly, preparing the ship for whatever might come. Everyone knew this could change everything for humanity. When the alien ships finally appeared, Lee could hardly believe what he saw. The vessels were massive, each one bigger than Earth's largest space station. They looked like giant predators made of metal and energy, sharp edges, dark colors, and weapons that glowed with dangerous light. "My God," whispered Park. "How many are there?" "I count 50 ships," reported Lieutenant Cho Min-ho from the weapons station. "And Captain, they're all pointing their guns at Earth." Lee's hands formed fists. No one threatened his home world. "Try to contact them," he ordered. The communication officer worked at his station. After a few minutes, he looked up. "Captain, they're sending us a message. It's in our language, but the grammar is wrong, like they learned it from old recordings." "Put it on the main screen." The image that appeared made Lee's skin crawl. The alien was tall and thin, with gray skin and black eyes. It wore dark armor covered in symbols that hurt to look at. When it spoke, its voice was cold and empty. "Humans of Earth," the alien said. "We are the hegemony. We have watched your species for many years. We know your strengths and your weaknesses. We know your military power and your technology." Lee felt anger building inside him. These creatures had been spying on humanity. "You will surrender your planet to us," the alien continued. "You will submit to hegemony rule. You have 72 hours to decide. If you refuse, your species will be destroyed. We have done this many times before. No species has ever defeated us." The message ended. The bridge was silent. Lee's communication officer spoke first. "Captain, I'm getting a message from Earth. Command, Admiral Kim Tae-ho wants to speak with you." Admiral Kim appeared on the screen. He was an old soldier with gray hair and hard eyes. Lee had served under him years ago and respected him greatly. "Captain Lee," Kim said, "I assume you saw their message?" Yes, sir. What are your orders? Kim's face showed no fear. We do not surrender. We do not submit. These aliens think they know us, but they are wrong. Humanity has been preparing for this day longer than they realize. Lee felt confused. Preparing, sir? 20 years ago, we detected strange signals from deep space. We suspected we might not be alone. Since then, we have been building defenses they don't know about. We have weapons they haven't seen. We have been ready for this fight. The Admiral's words filled Lee with hope. Humanity was not defenseless. Your orders are to observe and report, Kim continued. Do not engage unless attacked. We need to learn everything we can about these aliens before we act. Understood, sir. Kim's image disappeared. Lee looked around his bridge. His crew was watching him, waiting for orders. These people trusted him to keep them alive and help protect Earth. You heard the Admiral? Lee said. We watch and we learn. But remember this. No alien force will ever make humanity kneel. We have survived ice ages, wars, diseases, and disasters. We have spread across the stars. We are stronger than they think. Dr. Park was studying her sensors again. Captain, I'm detecting more ships. They're hiding behind the larger vessels. How many more? At least 200. Maybe 300. Park looked up at him. Captain, this is an invasion fleet. They came here to conquer us. Lee nodded. The aliens had made a big mistake. They thought humans were weak and easy to defeat. They had studied humanity, but they had not understood what they were seeing. Humans were not like other species. Humans did not give up. When pushed, they pushed back harder. When threatened, they became dangerous. The aliens had brought war to Earth, but they had no idea what human war looked like. Continue monitoring, Lee ordered, and prepare our weapons. Something tells me we're going to need them soon. Outside the ship, the alien fleet moved toward Earth like a dark cloud. But on Earth, hidden weapons were powering up. Secret defense systems were coming online. Humanity was getting ready to show the galaxy what they could do when someone threatened their home. The 72 hours had begun. The aliens thought they were counting down to human surrender. They were wrong. They were counting down to the beginning of their own destruction. Dr. Park Subin had not slept in 36 hours. She sat in the science lab of the Dauntless, surrounded by data screens showing information about the alien ships. Her eyes were red and tired, but she could not stop working. What she was finding made her sick to her stomach. "Computer, show me the metal composition analysis again," she said. The screen displayed her findings. The alien ships were made from materials that came from different worlds. Not just one or two worlds, but many different planets. The computer had identified metals and compounds from at least 15 different star systems. Park had seen this pattern before in her studies of dead civilizations. When a species was destroyed, their ships and cities were broken apart. The valuable materials were taken away and used to build new things. The aliens had been doing this for a very long time. She called up another file on her computer. 6 months ago, human exploration ships had found the remains of an ancient city on a planet called New Rome. The buildings were melted and broken. The people who lived there had been dead for hundreds of years. At the time, scientists thought it was some kind of natural disaster. Now Park knew better. She compared the damage patterns on New Rome with the weapons she could see on the alien ships. They matched perfectly. "Oh no," she whispered. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She pulled up every report of dead civilizations that humans had found. Planet after planet, all showing the same kind of destruction, all destroyed by the same type of weapons that the alien fleet now pointed at Earth. The door to the lab opened. Captain Lee walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You need to rest," he said, handing her a cup. "Captain, you need to see this." Park's voice shook. "These aliens, they've done this before, many times." She showed him the data on her screen. 17 different civilizations, all destroyed in the last 1,000 years. Look at the dates. They attack a new species every 50 to 60 years. Lee studied the information. His face grew dark with anger. "They're not just conquerors. They're killers." "It's worse than that," Park said. She brought up another file. "I've been analyzing their communications. The computer has translated some of their language. Captain, they call us the next harvest." The words hit Lee like a punch to the stomach. Harvest? They don't see us as people. They see us as resources. Our planets, our materials, our technology, even our bodies. They use everything. Park showed him pictures of the dead worlds. "Look at this planet. The cities are gone, but the mines are still working. They're using machines to strip away everything valuable. This world used to have 3 billion people. Now it's empty except for their mining robots." Lee sat down heavily in a chair. "How long do we have?" "If they follow their usual pattern, they'll spend a few more days studying our defenses. Then they'll attack with overwhelming force. They're very good at this, Captain. They've had centuries of practice." "But they don't know about our hidden defenses," Lee said. Park nodded. "That might be our only advantage. But, Captain, I've been studying their technology, too. It's very advanced. Their ships are faster than ours. Their weapons are more powerful. If this was a fair fight, we would lose." "Then we don't fight fair," Lee said. Meanwhile, on Earth, engineer Yoon Da-un was working in a secret facility buried deep under the Rocky Mountains. For 20 years, this place had been humanity's greatest secret. The sign on the door said, "Geological Survey Station 7. It was really much more than that. The facility was enormous. It stretched for miles underground, filled with weapons and technology that most humans had never seen. Giant factories built new ships every day. Laboratories developed weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Command centers coordinated defenses across the solar system." Yoon stood in the main control room, watching dozens of screens show the status of Earth's hidden defenses. Orbital platforms that could appear from nowhere, gravity weapons that could crush alien ships, missiles that could think for themselves and adapt to any enemy. "Ma'am," called one of her technicians, "the Admiral wants to speak with you." Admiral Kim Tae-ho appeared on the main screen. He looked tired but determined. "Yoon, what's our status?" he asked. "All systems are ready, sir. The orbital defense grid is fully charged and hidden. Our gravity generators are online. The AI fleet is standing by." "What about the new weapons?" Yoon smiled for the first time in days. "The quantum disruptors are ready for testing. If they work as designed, they'll tear apart alien ships at the molecular level." "Good. And our intelligence? We've intercepted more alien communications. They think our most advanced ships are the ones they can see. They don't know about the stealth fleet. They think our strongest weapons are nuclear missiles. They have no idea what we've really built." Admiral Kim nodded. "They've been watching us for 20 years, but they stopped paying attention to our military development 15 years ago. They think they know everything about us." "Sir, why did they stop watching?" Yoon asked. "Because we wanted them to stop. We detected their spy satellites and fed them false information. We showed them old, technology and weak defenses. We made them think we were easy prey. Yoon felt a chill of excitement. Humanity had been planning this moment for decades. The aliens follow a pattern, the Admiral continued. They study a species for years, then attack when they think victory is certain. But they always use the same tactics. Overwhelming force, fear, and shock. They've never faced an enemy that was ready for them. Back on the Dauntless, Lieutenant Cho Min-ho was analyzing the alien fleet formations. As the ship's tactical officer, it was his job to understand how the enemy fought. What he saw worried him. The alien ships moved in perfect coordination. Their weapons coverage was flawless. Their positioning showed centuries of military experience. These were not random raiders or pirates. This was a professional military force that had conquered many worlds. But as Cho studied their movements, he began to see patterns. The aliens did everything the same way. They formed the same battle lines. They used the same approach vectors. They had become predictable. Computer, he said, compare alien fleet movements with historical Earth naval battles. The results made him smile. The aliens fought like an ancient Earth navy from 500 years ago. They believed in massive ships, overwhelming firepower, and straightforward attacks. They had never learned to adapt because they had never needed to. Human military thinking had evolved through thousands of years of fighting other humans. Humans were creative, unpredictable, and vicious when threatened. The aliens were about to learn what real warfare looked like. Cho opened a communication channel to Earth Command. "This is Lieutenant Cho on the Dauntless. I have tactical information you need to see." As the second day of the alien ultimatum began, humanity was ready. The aliens thought they were counting down to an easy victory. They had no idea they were counting down to the beginning of their own nightmare. On worlds across the galaxy, the spirits of 17 dead civilizations waited for justice. They would not wait much longer. The 72 hours were over. The alien fleet began moving toward Earth like a dark storm. On the bridge of their command ship, the hegemony leaders felt confident. They had done this many times before. No species had ever surprised them. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The first sign of trouble came when their long-range sensors detected movement around Earth. Ships were appearing from nowhere, materializing out of empty space like ghosts. These were not the primitive vessels the aliens had been watching. These ships looked different, deadlier. "What is this?" demanded the hegemony fleet commander. His name was impossible for human tongues to pronounce. His species had conquered 12 worlds before joining the hegemony. He thought he had seen every type of warfare. "Unknown contacts, sir," reported his tactical officer. "They appear to be using some form of stealth technology. Our sensors did not detect them until they decloaked." The fleet commander studied the new ships on his screen. They were sleek and fast, unlike the bulky vessels humanity used for cargo transport. "How many?" 300 ships, sir." "No, 400. More are appearing every minute." Captain, Jang Hyun-soo commanded the human defense fleet from his flagship, the UES Retribution. Around him, the hidden fleet of Earth came to life. Ships that had been built in secret factories, crewed by volunteers who had trained for this moment their entire lives. "All ships, this is Admiral Jang," he said into his communicator. He had been promoted just hours ago. "Remember your training. These aliens think they know how to fight. Show them they're wrong." The battle began when the aliens fired their first salvo. Massive energy beams lanced through space toward Earth. They expected to see cities burning and defenses crumbling. Instead, their weapons struck invisible barriers around the planet. The energy dispersed harmlessly, absorbed by gravity field, generators that had been hidden throughout the solar system. "Impossible," whispered the fleet commander. "Our weapons have never failed before." Then the human ships opened fire. The alien commander had expected nuclear missiles and primitive energy weapons. What he got instead were quantum disruptors that tore his ships apart at the atomic level, gravity cannons that crushed alien vessels like tin cans, smart missiles that learned from each attack and became harder to stop. The first alien ship died in a burst of light that hurt to look at. Then another. Then 10 more. Dr. Shin Yu-na worked frantically in the Luna Base Communications Center, intercepting alien messages. As the battle raged around Earth, she listened to the fear growing in alien voices. "They're panicking," she reported to Admiral Kim. "They've never faced resistance like this. Their communications are full of confusion and terror." "What are they saying?" Kim asked. "They're calling us demons, monsters. They say human weapons are impossible. They want to retreat, but their commander won't let them." On the screen, another alien ship exploded. The human defense fleet moved like a pack of wolves, coordinating attacks that the aliens could not predict or counter. Where alien ships expected human vessels to be, they found empty space. Where they thought they were safe, human ships appeared and struck. The aliens fought like they always had, in massive formations with overwhelming firepower. It had worked against every other species they had conquered. Those species had tried to fight back with similar tactics, using big ships and powerful weapons in direct confrontation. Humans were different. They had learned warfare from fighting each other for thousands of years. Human military doctrine was based on speed, deception, and hitting the enemy where they were weakest. Captain Zhang watched his tactical display with satisfaction. The alien fleet was powerful, but it was also predictable. They moved in straight lines. They grouped their ships together. They tried to win through brute force. "All ships, execute pattern Delta 7, he ordered. The human fleet scattered like leaves in the wind. Instead of facing the alien formation directly, they attacked from above, below, and behind. They used the gravity of planets and moons to change direction in ways the aliens could not follow. They fired, then disappeared, then appeared somewhere else entirely. The aliens began to break formation. Ships that had fought together for centuries suddenly found themselves isolated and surrounded. On the Dauntless, Captain Lee watched the battle through his ship's sensors. The sight filled him with fierce pride. These aliens had destroyed 17 civilizations. They had killed trillions of innocent beings. Now they were learning what happened when they faced a species that refused to be victims. "Captain," called Dr. Park from her station. "I'm detecting something strange. The alien ships are emitting distress signals." "Distress signals?" "Yes, sir. They're calling for help. But, Captain, they're not calling to their own fleet. They're sending messages to deep space, far beyond our galaxy." Lee felt a chill. "They're calling for reinforcements?" "I don't think so. The messages are too desperate. It's like they're asking for permission to retreat." Lieutenant Cho looked up from his tactical display. "Captain, the alien fleet is trying to withdraw. They're pulling back from Earth." Lee couldn't believe it. The mighty hegemony, conquerors of worlds, were running away from their first real fight. But Admiral Kim had other plans. His voice came over the communication system, broadcasting to every human ship in the fleet. "All vessels, this is Earth Command. Do not let them escape. These aliens have committed genocide against 17 civilizations. They came here to murder our families and steal our world. We will not give them the chance to do this to another species. The human fleet surged forward. Ships that had been defending Earth now became hunters. They pursued the retreating aliens with ruthless efficiency. The alien fleet commander watched his proud armada being destroyed piece by piece. His ships, which had seemed invincible just hours ago, were being cut apart by weapons he didn't understand. Tactics he couldn't counter. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "We studied them for 20 years." His intelligence officer was trembling with fear. "Commander, I think they wanted us to study them. I think they fed us false information." The terrible truth began to dawn on the fleet commander. Humanity had not been caught by surprise. They had been waiting, planning, preparing. For this exact moment, a human ship appeared on his main screen, sleek and deadly. It spoke to him in perfect hegemony language. "Alien vessel, this is Captain Li Wu-jin of the United Earth ship Dauntless. You came to our world expecting to find helpless prey. Instead, you found something you have never encountered before. You found humans who refused to surrender." The fleet commander tried to respond, but his ship's weapons and engines were already failing. Human weapons had torn through his defenses like they were made of paper. "Your empire has spent centuries destroying civilizations that could not fight back," Lee continued. "You have grown weak and arrogant. You forgot that the universe is full of species who will fight for their homes, their families, their freedom. You made one crucial mistake," Lee said as alien ships burned around Earth. "You believed your own propaganda. You thought you were superior. You thought conquest was easy. Today, you learn the truth. Today, you discover what happens when predators meet an apex predator." The battle for Earth was over. The alien fleet was destroyed or captured. But Captain Lee knew this was just the beginning. Somewhere in the galaxy, other species were waiting for rescue. The hegemony had bases, slave worlds, and fleets that needed to be stopped. Humanity had passed its first test. Now it was time to take the fight to the enemy. 3 weeks after the battle for Earth, Commander Bae Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of the UES Iron Will, watching an alien world burn. But these were not human fires. These were liberation fires, set by slaves who had waited centuries for freedom. Thus her Iron Will was humanity's newest weapon, a stealth ship that could appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. Bae had taken it deep into hegemony space, farther from Earth than any human had ever traveled. His mission was simple but dangerous: find alien slave worlds and set them free. "Commander," called his navigation officer, "we're approaching the Kepler 442 system. Long-range sensors detect massive industrial activity." Bae nodded. Intelligence reports said this system contained one of the hegemony's largest slave camps. Millions of beings from a dozen different species were forced to work in mines and factories, producing weapons for their oppressors. "Take us in carefully," Bae ordered. "Remember, we're not here to destroy everything. We're here to free the, prisoners." As the Iron Will moved closer to the industrial world, Bae could see the scars of alien occupation. The planet's surface was covered with massive mining operations that had torn away mountains and poisoned rivers. Cities that had once housed a proud civilization were now prison camps surrounded by energy barriers. But Bae also saw something the aliens had missed. Hidden among the slave workers were resistance fighters, members of the original population, who had never given up hope. They had been waiting for someone strong enough to challenge the hegemony. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "I'm detecting weapons platforms around the planet. 12 orbital defense stations, each one capable of destroying a fleet." What about ground defenses? Heavy security around the prison camps, guard towers, energy barriers, automated weapons. The aliens have made sure their slaves can't escape. Bay smiled grimly. The aliens had built their defenses to keep prisoners in and weak rescue attempts out. They had never considered what would happen if a real military force came to free the slaves. All hands, prepare for combat, Bay announced. Today we're going to show these aliens what happens when they enslave the innocent. The iron will struck like lightning. Human quantum torpedoes tore through alien defense platforms before they could react. Gravity bombs collapsed the orbital stations into twisted metal. Within minutes, the hegemony's control of the planet's space was broken, but the real work was just beginning. Dr. Lim Soo-young, a xenobiologist who had volunteered for the mission, worked to establish contact with the slave populations below. "I'm detecting dozens of different languages," she reported, "species from all across the galaxy. Some of these beings have been enslaved for over 300 years. "Can you communicate with them?" Bay asked. "Working on it. The computer is analyzing their communication patterns. Wait. I think I've got something." Dr. Lim activated the ship's communication system. When she spoke, her words were translated into dozens of alien languages simultaneously. "People of Kepler 442. This is Dr. Lim Soo-young of the Human Liberation Fleet. We are here to free you from hegemony control. Resistance fighters, prepare for our assault. In 1 hour, your captivity ends." The response was immediate. Across the planet's surface, hidden transmitters began broadcasting. The Resistance had been waiting for this moment for generations. Bay watched his tactical display as human assault ships descended toward the planet. But this was not an invasion. It was a rescue operation planned with military precision. The assault began at dawn on the alien world. Human soldiers, led by Captain Han Do-yan, struck at guard towers and weapons installations. Their weapons were designed to disable rather than destroy, stunning alien guards and deactivating security systems without harming the prisoners. At the same time, resistance fighters across the planet began their uprising. Beings who had been forced to work in mines for decades suddenly turned on their guards. Factory slaves overwhelmed their supervisors. Prison camps that had seemed impregnable were opened from within. Captain Han led her troops through the largest prison complex on the planet. The facility held over 50,000 prisoners from 8 different species. As her soldiers disabled the energy barriers, beings who had not seen freedom in lifetimes began to emerge. "My God," whispered one of her soldiers. "Some of these people have been here since they were children." Han felt rage building inside her. The hegemony had not just conquered these species, they had stolen entire generations, turning children into slaves who grew old and died in captivity. "Secure the command center," she ordered. "I want every record, every file, every piece of information about hegemony operations. These bastards are going to pay for what they've done." Back on the Iron Will, Commander Bay was coordinating the liberation of 12 other worlds in the same star system. Human ships were appearing throughout hegemony space, striking at slave camps and military bases with surgical precision. "Sir," called his communication officer, "we're receiving a message from Admiral Kim on Earth." Admiral Kim appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Bay could see the bustling activity of Earth's War Command Center. "Commander, excellent work on Kepler 442. How many freed?" "Over 2 million prisoners liberated so far, sir. We've also captured substantial intelligence about hegemony operations." "Good. I have new orders for you. Intelligence reports indicate there are at least 30 more slave worlds in this sector. I'm sending you the coordinates." Bay felt a moment of concern. Sir, with respect, the Iron Will is just one ship. 30 worlds. You won't be alone, Admiral Kim said with a slight smile. Check your long-range sensors. Bay turned to his sensor operator, who was staring at his screen in amazement. Sir, I'm detecting multiple human ships entering the system. Dozens of them. That's the first Liberation Fleet, Admiral Kim explained. Captain Ryu Chan-wook is commanding. Your mission is to coordinate with them and free every slave world in hegemony space. As Bay watched, human ships materialized throughout the star system. Not just military vessels, but hospital ships to care for freed prisoners, transport ships to carry them to safety, and construction ships to begin rebuilding damaged worlds. Dr. Lim looked up from her communication station with tears in her eyes. Commander, I'm receiving messages from resistance groups on 15 different worlds. Word of our liberation is spreading. They're organizing uprisings, preparing for our arrival. How is that possible? Bay asked. We only started this operation 3 weeks ago. Sir, I think we underestimated how much these species hate the hegemony. They've been waiting for someone to show them that their oppressors could be defeated. Now that they've seen human ships destroying alien defenses, they believe freedom is possible. On the surface of Kepler 442, Captain Han was interviewing freed prisoners with the help of universal translators. What she learned made her sick with anger. The hegemony had not just enslaved these beings. They had conducted experiments on them, testing new weapons and diseases. They had forced families to fight each other for food. They had taken children from their parents and trained them to be guards over their own people. How many worlds has the hegemony conquered? Han asked an elderly prisoner who had been a leader among his people before the invasion. In my lifetime, I have seen 7 civilizations fall, the old being replied. But there are records of many more. The hegemony has been expanding for over 1,000 years. Not anymore, Han said firmly. Humanity is going to make sure they never conquer another world. The old being looked at her with hope in his eyes. Your species must be very powerful to challenge the hegemony. We're not the most powerful, Han replied, but we're the most stubborn. When someone threatens our friends, we don't stop fighting until the threat is eliminated. As the liberation of Kepler 442 continued, word spread throughout the galaxy. Species that had hidden in fear for centuries began to hope again. Resistance movements that had been crushed began to reorganize. The hegemony's reign of terror was ending one world at a time. But in the deepest parts of hegemony space, alien leaders were planning their response. They had never faced an enemy like humanity before, but they were not defenseless. They had weapons and allies that humans had not yet encountered. The war for the galaxy was just beginning, but for the first time in 1,000 years, the victims had hope. Humanity had given them something the hegemony could never take away. The knowledge that their oppressors could be defeated. On dozens of worlds, freed slaves looked up at the stars and saw human ships patrolling the darkness. They no longer feared the night. The monsters that had haunted their dreams for centuries were running, and the humans were hunting them. 6 months after the liberation began, Admiral Lee Woo-jin stood on the command deck of the UES Dauntless, looking at the most important planet in the galaxy. Before them hung the hegemony capital world, home to the alien empire that had terrorized civilizations for over 1,000 years. But Lee was not alone. Around his ship flew vessels from dozens of species that humanity had freed. Former slaves had become allies, and their combined fleet was the largest force for freedom the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral, called Captain Ryu-chan Wook from the Liberation Fleet flagship. "All ships report ready. 47 different species, over 2,000 vessels, the largest alliance in galactic history." Lee nodded with satisfaction. In just 6 months, humanity had accomplished what no other species had managed in centuries. They had united the galaxy against its oppressors. "Open a channel to the hegemony capital," Lee ordered. The main screen showed the alien city below. Massive towers reached toward the sky, built from materials stolen from conquered worlds. The entire planet was a monument to 1,000 years of murder and theft. "This is Admiral Lee Woo-jin of the United Earth Fleet, speaking for the Galactic Liberation Alliance," he began. "Leaders of the hegemony, your empire is finished. Your fleets are destroyed. Your slave worlds are free. You have one choice. Surrender now, or face the consequences." For long minutes, there was no response. Then the screen flickered, and an alien figure appeared. It was the supreme leader of the hegemony, an ancient being whose species had started the empire centuries ago. "Human," the alien said in a voice full of rage and fear, "you do not understand what you have done. The hegemony protects this galaxy from threats far worse than anything you can imagine." "You protect nothing," Lee replied coldly. "You are parasites who feed on the suffering of others. Your protection is a lie. You tell yourselves to justify mass murder." The alien leader's face showed desperation. "There are things beyond the edge of the galaxy, ancient enemies that destroyed our homeworld. The hegemony exists to build the strength needed to face them when they return." Lee had heard this excuse before from captured hegemony officers. It was always the same story. They were the real victims, forced to conquer others to survive some imaginary threat. "Even if that were true," Lee said, "it doesn't justify what you've done. You had choices. You could have asked for help. You could have formed alliances. Instead, you chose to become monsters." On the bridge of the Dauntless, Dr. Park Subin was analyzing sensor data from the planet below. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from underground facilities. They're powering up weapons." General Park Min-seo, commanding the ground assault forces, spoke from his transport ship. "Sir, it looks like they're going to fight to the end." Lee was not surprised. Throughout the liberation campaign, hegemony forces had shown they would rather die than surrender. They could not accept a universe where they were not the dominant power. "All ships, prepare for final assault," Lee ordered. "But remember our rules of engagement. We're here to end the hegemony, not to become like them." The battle for the capital world began when alien defense platforms opened fire. But these were not the same weapons humanity had faced at Earth. These were older, more powerful systems that the hegemony had been building for centuries. Energy, beams capable of destroying moons, lanced out at the Liberation Fleet. Gravity weapons tried to crush entire squadrons of ships. The aliens were using every weapon they had ever developed, throwing everything at the Alliance forces. But the Alliance was ready. Ships from 17 different species worked together, in perfect coordination. Where human vessels were fast and deadly, alien allies provided heavy firepower and defensive screens. Where one species was weak, another was strong. Captain Jang Hyun-soo, now commanding an entire battle group, watched his tactical display with professional admiration. "Look at them work together," he said to his officers. 6 months ago, these species had never met each other. Now they fight like they've been allies for decades. The reason was simple. They all shared the same enemy. Every species in the Alliance had suffered under hegemony rule. They all had families to avenge, homes to reclaim, futures to protect. Dr. Shin Yu-na, monitoring communications from Luna Base, reported good news. Admiral, I'm detecting massive civil unrest on the planet below. The hegemony's own people are turning against their leaders. This was part of humanity's strategy. Unlike the hegemony, humans had studied their enemy carefully. They knew that even within the alien empire, many beings had grown tired of endless war and conquest. When offered the chance for peace, these populations often chose to rebel. "Sir," called the tactical officer, "the planetary defenses are failing. General Park's forces are ready to begin the ground assault." Lee made a decision that would echo through galactic history. Negative. No ground assault. His officers looked at him in surprise. General Park's voice came over the communicator. "Admiral, we can take the planet. The enemy is beaten." "I know we can," Lee replied, "but we won't. Send this message to the planet. Any hegemony leader who surrenders will be granted a fair trial. Any civilian who lays down their weapons will be protected. We are not here for revenge. We are here for justice." The offer shocked both his own forces and the enemy. Throughout galactic history, conquest had always meant death for the defeated. But humanity was trying something different. Hours passed as the message spread across the planet below. Then, one by one, hegemony defense stations began powering down. Military bases raised white flags. Government buildings opened their doors to surrender. The Supreme Leader appeared on screen again, his face showing defeat and confusion. "Why?" he asked. "Why do you offer mercy to your enemies?" Lee looked at the alien leader with something approaching pity. "Because someone has to break the cycle. For 1,000 years, this galaxy has known nothing but conquest and revenge. Every species that gained power used it to hurt others. We're going to be different." "You are naive," the alien replied. "Power corrupts. Give it time, and you will. Become like us." "Maybe," Lee admitted, "but we're going to try to be better. And if we fail, if we become what you were, then some other species will have to stop us. That's how it should work." 2 days later, Admiral Lee stood in the hegemony's former throne room, now converted into a courtroom. Representatives from every liberated species had come to witness the trials of the alien leaders, but these were not revenge trials. They were careful legal proceedings where evidence was presented and justice was determined. Dr. Lim Soo-young had spent weeks documenting hegemony crimes. The evidence was overwhelming. Genocide, slavery, torture, the destruction of entire civilizations. The alien leaders were guilty of crimes beyond counting. But the trials also revealed something else. When the Supreme Leader spoke of threats from beyond the galaxy, he was not entirely lying. Records showed that the original hegemony homeworld had indeed been destroyed by some external force. The survivors had fled to this galaxy, carrying with them a terror that had shaped their entire civilization. "Fear," said Lee during his closing statement. "Fear drove them to conquer others. Fear made them believe that only through domination could they survive. But fear is not an excuse for evil. The sentences were swift but fair. The worst criminals would spend their lives in prison. Others would work to repair the damage they had caused. Some of the younger aliens, those who had been born into the system and never chose their crimes, were offered the chance for redemption. Most importantly, the trials established a new principle for the galaxy. Might did not make right. Power came with responsibility. Those who ruled had to answer to those they governed. In the months that followed, humanity helped establish the Galactic Council, a democratic body where every species had a voice. Earth became the headquarters, not because humans demanded it, but because everyone trusted them to be fair mediators. Captain Lee, now promoted to Grand Admiral, stood on the observation deck of the new council station, watching ships from 100 different worlds come and go in peace. Children of species that had been enslaved for centuries played together in the station's gardens. Former enemies worked side by side to build a better future. "Admiral," called Dr. Park, joining him at the observation window. "Long-range sensors have detected something at the edge of the galaxy. Energy signatures unlike anything we've seen before." Lee nodded. He had been expecting this. The Supreme Leader's warnings about external threats had turned out to be partially true. Something was coming from beyond the galaxy, something that had driven the original hegemony from their home. "How long until they arrive?" Lee asked. "Unknown. Could be years, could be decades. But when they come, they'll find a very different galaxy than the one the hegemony left behind." Lee smiled. "Good, because this time the galaxy will be ready, not as conquered slaves, but as free allies. Whatever comes, we'll face it together." On hundreds of worlds, former slaves looked up at the stars with hope instead of fear. Children learned about the humans who had taught the galaxy that freedom was possible. And in the deepest reaches of space, human ships patrolled the darkness, ready to defend all who called this galaxy home. The age of the hegemony was over. The age of freedom had begun. And somewhere in the void between galaxies,